So I work with thousands of students, and particularly when you get to the third year or in your postgrad, that kind of stuff, the dissertation is really important, but a lot of people really struggle. How do you make it really come to life? How do you kind of add some sparkle? How do you kind of really make it something that you feel proud of? So here are 7 tips that will help you ace your diss. So it doesn't matter what subject you're doing, it doesn't matter what level you're at, it doesn't matter how advanced you are, whether you're starting off or you're almost at the end. These tips are going to really help you sprinkle some magic, bring your dissertation, your report, whatever it is, to life. Now the first one is, you've got to learn to play the game. This is a game, this is a construct, it's designed to allow you to succeed or to fail or to show your strengths or your weaknesses, to be relevant to the learning outcomes, to the subject, to be timely and all that kind of stuff. It's a game, and in a way the marker is the referee. So you imagine me, I'm sitting there and I've got loads and loads of dissertations, okay? And I've maybe got 5 to do in a day, and I'm, whatever. Play the game, think about who you're trying to persuade. Think about what's going to be interesting to them. So when I come across a dissertation or a project or report, and it's got that extra kind of, sizzle, it's got something which is kind of like some autonomy, it's got some critical thinking, it's got some creativity, the person's clearly trying to be disruptive or non-conformist or trying to take a different approach, all those kind of things. I sit up and I take notice, and already instantly, within the first few seconds, I'm beginning to be interested and engaged in this. And I'm more likely to think, right, this is worthy of a better grade. So you've got to play the game. And also the other thing you've got to do is you've got to learn the rules. So the second tip is, like I said, is learn the rules. And in this case, the rules are the learning outcomes. Now, learning outcomes are kind of often very boring. They can be kind of full of jargon. They can be quite, they're hard to understand. But they are the things. So, when I'm sitting there marking, or one of my colleagues is, or whatever, they're the thing that we're looking at. And inevitably what will happen is that it doesn't matter what uni you're at, or what, country you're in, or what your course is, or whatever, the learning outcomes will have common things. Starting off, so much of it is about critical thinking. It's about critical evaluation, analysing sources, finding new things, taking a perspective, trying to work out whether this is true or whether there are alternatives, that kind of stuff. It's looking beyond the obvious. It's kind of trying to really deconstruct this thing and pull it apart. So that's really important learning outcome. You're definitely going to have things about probably, some elements of new knowledge. So you've got secondary knowledge, which is, secondary research already exists. Primary research, new knowledge. You're probably going to have some stuff about that. You're going to have to go out and find out new things. And your approach to that is really important. Are you doing it just almost kind of for the sake of it, or are you genuinely trying to find new knowledge? Because that's really what a dissertation, whatever it is about. It's about new knowledge. So you've got to really think about that. How can I contribute? How can I find new things, better questions, ask interesting people, that kind of stuff? That's really key as well. You've got to be able to make conclusions. You've got to basically be able to draw conclusions and put things in and kind of go, well, I've discovered this, or I've discovered that, or this leads to this question. So you're constantly trying to make conclusions and connections. You're deconstructing stuff, you're coming up with ideas, and that leads then into creativity, potential solutions to your problems. How are you going to approach this? And often what happens is, and this particularly happens with loads of dissertations, people go too broad and they try to solve massive problems. So actually try and funnel it down. And then if you do that, you can suggest solutions. So there's definitely going to be something in there about that as well. And there's going to be stuff about autonomy. There's going to be things about how you've engaged, how you've planned this thing, how you've approached it, how you've had kind of, maturity, and also emotional intelligence and those kind of things. So, you're thinking about the research, you're thinking about the ideation, you're thinking about the concepts that you've developed or the ideas that, potential solutions, and you're thinking about autonomy. All of these things, if you kind of really try and add a little bit of sizzle to them, deconstruct the learning outcomes, go to your tutor or whoever's there or whoever you're working with and look at them. It's amazing to me how many students will approach a subject and not have looked at the learning outcomes and don't really understand them, and they're the rules of the game. So really, really make them work for you. So the third tip is sell the sizzle, not the sausage. And basically what that means is there's a real, danger that a dissertation can be dry and corporate, and you can almost kind of try and dress it up with lots of different language and big words and things like that. But what you've got to think about is you're really trying to bring this problem to life. You're trying to kind of tell the story of it, and it needs to have a flow and it needs to have a rhythm. You know, if it just is all very kind of like corporate and dry and dull, yeah, sure, you've probably got lots of good stuff in there, but it's not going to be compelling to read. You know, this is a communication document. You're trying to get it so that people are inspired or excited or interested in it. So approach it as a communication tool, as something that needs to have, you know, spark and interest. And what I mean by sell the sizzle is look for things that kind of like are really interesting. You know, look for like insights or things that kind of like maybe have a bit of a human story or kind of like make you stop and think or surprise you. You know, you don't just have to kind of go, all right, because this is, say, a business report, it has to be all businessy. You know, we are, as academics or whoever's marking it, are looking for things that kind of inspire and engage us. So if we discover something new or you kind of like disrupt something or get us to think differently, then that's going to be, you know, really cool. The other thing as well is that, you know, there's a story, you know, there is a beginning, there's a, you know, a quest. You're trying to solve this problem. You know, in a way, you're the hero trying to solve the problem. You're trying to get through and over these obstacles and get to a solution and a conclusion. So, you know, you can make a rhythm to it. You can make it feel like it's not just report, this, that. You know, bring some energy, bring your passion, bring your personality to it. Bring your humanity to it. So try and really think about, and it might just be a few little sentences or a few little things, just change the language a little bit, make it feel a little bit more kind of maybe journalistic or a little bit more kind of human. And you'll begin to see that actually the report begins to breathe, the dissertation begins to breathe, it begins to have life. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create something that really communicates, engages, and inspires. So whatever you're doing, it's really important that you look after your mental health and you kind of take an approach that is kind to yourself. It's very easy when you're doing something that, you know, you feel has got a lot of pressure behind you and it's really important and you really want to kind of do your best to kind of sprint too much, but you've got to see this as really being a marathon. You know, you've got to take time to look after yourself. You've got to give yourself a rhythm. You want to break things up and mix them up so you're not like doing, you know, huge long sessions on one thing. But the other thing as well is that it'll make you more effective. Your performance will improve if you're in a good mental place. And a lot of the stuff that you maybe think is not useful time is useful time. So walking, going for a walk, going and doing some sport, doing things that are outside of the particular project are really important because they're allowing your brain to kind of percolate. You know, sort of more than 80% of our brain power is used subconsciously. So you've got to allow that time for the brain to kind of like do its magic. And that's why it's really important to get a rhythm, to look after your mental health, to eat well, to sleep well, to just try and make sure that, as I say, you're being kind to yourself. But it's not just being soft, it's actually about making sure that you perform to your optimum ability. So look after yourself, be kind, and protect your mental health. So the next tip is about secondary research. Now this is kind of, you know, whether it's a literature review or whatever it is, it's really fundamental. You know, it's showing that you know what's going on in the world relating to this specific problem that you're looking at. It's showing that, you know, you're relevant, you're timely, you're authoritative, you know, you can search and you can dig and you can evaluate and you can analyze and all those kind of things. Really, really important. But in a way, it can also be seen as being a little bit, as I say, a little bit dry sometimes. So try and do something to make it really sing. I kind of call it reflected glory. So try and find things that really kind of help you kind of bring this subject to life. You know, don't just go for the academic stuff. Go for industry experts. Go for, you know, people who've got alternative perspectives. Go for people who are kind of trying to disrupt and make this different. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to get a picture, you're trying to build a picture of this particular thing. And also the other thing is that probably as a, you know, a student or as a postgrad or whatever, you don't have that much academic credibility at the moment. But what you're doing with this reflected glory from other sources, from amazing people, you know, amazing thinkers and business people or whoever it is, or scientists, is you're reflecting glory onto your own work. So really try and think about secondary research as being inspiring and engaging and interesting and bringing your subject to life for the reader or for the person who's going to be marking your work. So remember, you can use this video however you want. You know, we're all about personalized learning. So if you want to kind of, stop and pause and write things down and make a few notes or develop a critical plan or whatever, you do that. We're also going to give you notes at the end and give you kind of like, the rules, a summary of them and that kind of thing. But it's really important because everybody learns differently. So just use us in the way that works for you. Okay, so the next tip is about primary research. And this is one of those ones that so many people get scared about. So many students and people they don't like it, they find it scary, they kind of feel nervous about it. But also what happens is that often there are so many rules and regulation and barriers and ethics committees and all that kind of stuff that you kind of don't even want to start because it seems so complicated. And what I want to do is kind of bring it right back to what is primary research. Primary research is new knowledge. That's the kind of core of, in many ways, why we go to university, why we do academic dissertations. We're trying to develop new knowledge, put new knowledge out there into the world. But it doesn't need to be boring. It doesn't just need to be surveys and questionnaires and whatever. You can do it in really engaging ways. You can get people involved in workshops who are playing, who are making. You can get people having a drink. You can get people, going out and doing an activity or going onto the streets or trying to get them to solve problems for you. Essentially what you're trying to do is work out a way to get interesting, relevant, timely, valid research, valid insights from people. And doing that in a very dry, dull, questionnaire-based way can often just be dull. So mix it up a little bit. Obviously you need to speak with your tutors and you need to speak with your course people or whatever, but as much as possible, and this isn't just in the creative industries, it might well be, in medicine or in science or engineering, there are interesting ways of solving this kind of particular problem of how to do really cool, interesting, engaging primary research. So have a little fun, play with it, and really think about primary research as a creative process. And the last tip is to really think about, what does success look like? What you're doing here is you're kind of going, okay, success looks like this kind of grade. I'm delivering it on time. It's going to be, solving these kind of problems. It's going to have passion and energy. It's going to stand out. And what you then do is you kind of write those down. What does success look like? Break it right down. And then work backwards. What do you need to get there? Right, okay, I need to get this grade, or I want to get this grade. So I need to make sure that I understand these learning outcomes. And then what I need to do is make sure that where I've got some weaknesses in here, I add them in. You're working backwards in order to make it successful. But also what it does is it allows you to break it down into bite-sized pieces, and then you can put them into a critical path or a plan or whatever you want to do. So you're kind of knowing, in a way, where you're headed. It gives you a map, and that's really important because otherwise you can feel a bit lost. So try and make sure that you think about what success looks like, deconstruct it, break it down into bite-sized pieces, put them into a plan, and then just work forward, and you'll get there and you'll be more successful. So we'd love you to follow us because we really want to work with you to learn smarter, deeper and happier. We've got loads of content on all of these subjects, creativity, critical thinking, employment, mental health, but also we're really about working together, building a community so we can all kind of learn happy. So follow us and we'll see you soon.